We are live. Matt Gluckman of Think Fitness Life and Tyler Toone with me, um, cycling instructor, former mountain climber.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, thanks for taking the time to set this up. It's been really fun getting to know you over these past like 3, 4 weeks, whatever we've been going
Hey,
grabbing breakfast,
likewise.
seeing each other at the gym. Yeah, appreciate it. So I'll just do kind of a quick intro background wise. I'm going to go all the way back. I grew up in a small town called Huntsville, and that's where Pine View Reservoir. It's a beautiful location up in the hills near Ogden, Utah, and it was a Huckleberry Finn experience. So I loved adventures. I loved outdoor things. Uh, Played a ton of soccer, like not like competitively, but just the local club. Played a lot of soccer up until about 15 years old, and I had a kind of a life-changing event right then. And so the first event was my dad had lived for like 7 years with cancer, and so when I was 14, he actually passed away, which was an unfortunate event. We were grateful for the years we had with him, and then 6 months after that, I got in, well, around that time, I got into rock climbing, and because my friends were doing it, and it was really cool. We had no mentors. We were just literally just reading magazines and
Teaching
trying to figure out how to
yourself.
do it,
Yeah.
teaching ourselves how to rock climb. And we were in Ogden Canyon, and I fell 42 and a half feet and shattered the kneecap, broke my tibia, tore my ear halfway off, and just some other injuries like that. So that was kind of a life shift for me, right? So I just lost my dad, this rock climbing accident. It was life altering. I couldn't play soccer anymore. But I was sitting in the hospital, and this is where the reason why I'm going here is this is my whole mentality of like overcoming obstacles, overcoming challenges, whatever they are. I'm sitting in the hospital 2 days in after this big accident. My mom's there, and this great big guy, his name's Doug Allen. He's a hero. He actually just recently passed away. Hardcore hunter up in the valley. I'll share this so a lot of people. He's a true legend up there. He walks in to come see me. He'd actually taught us a few things, done some rescue, and showed us how to rope and stuff, climbing. And he walks in and he says, "So Tyler, are you gonna climb anymore?" And I said, "Oh, Doug, look at my leg. I'm in a huge cast. I almost died. I don't know." My mom's like, "Of course not, Doug. He's not gonna climb anymore." He gets right down in my face like this. He's right down in my face. He says, "What do you do when you get bucked off the horse?" And I just felt this fire inside of me, like, "Oh man, you get right back on. That's just how it is." And sure enough, that's what I did. The very first climb after 6 months of recovery, the very first climb I went out to tackle and do was when I fell on. And I'll tell you, I was nervous. I was shaking, I was scared, and I got it and I did it. And then I continued climbing from there. I traveled to Europe, lived in Europe for a summer climbing, just rock climbing, just sport climbing, bouldering, bolted routes, not a lot of traditional or natural trail type stuff. Kept doing that, but just the leg and everything. Anyways, that's the beginning. And then that same mentality took me into my first experience as an entrepreneur right out of college. I started a business, ran it for 7 years, had a partner. He was an internet service provider. Then we got into software development, built websites for people, web hosting. And then from that point, I've had a career of about 25 years in like technology, product management primarily. Now I'm kind of setting sail on a new path, kind of going back into the entrepreneurial avenue. And part of that is fitness. I'm super passionate about fitness.
Well, even before right now, I mean, how long have you been a spin instructor?
Yeah, so yeah, kind of going to that middle 20s. So being an entrepreneur is really stressful, man. I know you're in the same boat, right? You're an entrepreneur. It's really hard. And so I got really out of shape. So I was 25, 26, 27, started having a few kids. And I went in for a physical and I was 192 pounds, I think. And I'm 5'8", so I was way overweight. I look back on these pictures, I was overweight. And the doctor runs all the blood work and he's like, "Hey, you're got high cholesterol, you're borderline, you're like borderline diabetic," and just crazy things like that. High cholesterol, high blood pressure is what it was. And so I said, I got to do something. So this is around 28, 29. So I started kind of lifting weights, trying to get back in shape. And I thought, I got to do something different. So I'm like, what's something that's going to like really challenge me? Kind of like get back on the horse type concept. And so I decided, well, let's try to do a triathlon. And I hated running, like, because it would hurt my knee. I had metal in my knee, and I'd had metal taken out because I had a skiing accident when I was 17. So I had ultimately over the years, I've had 4 surgeries on my left leg and one on my right for a meniscus because compounded itself. So I got into triathlons. I started doing the smaller ones, like the sprints. I did a couple. I think I did about maybe 6 or 7, like Olympic distance ones. And the running, I hated it. Swimming, I like seriously felt like I was drowning. I studied it for a whole year, did master classes, and got decent so I could like at least survive.
Yeah, maintain your own. Yeah.
Yeah, maintain it. But I loved the cycling. I'm like, wow, this doesn't hurt. I can go
Interesting.
long ways, you know. And
So that's how you kind of fell in
well,
love with the cycling world. Yeah, interesting.
yeah, totally. So I was about 30 years old, and I'd already done like 4 of these triathlons. I kept doing them, along with the cycling. And I just said, well, I want to
Just struggled through the swimming because the cycling was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, in the triathlon world, like it says, like you'll never win a race as the best swimmer. You'll always win it as the best runner, or
right.
That's where the real pros magnify their skills. And so, yeah, it was really interesting. So I just started cycling. But my rotation was like this, man. You've probably worked with, I don't know if you've worked with any cyclists, but like we train, we start in the spring, we ride super hard, like long distances. I was running, swimming, biking long distances. And then November comes around, I'm like, oh, okay, it's time to like rebuild. Like, so I would lose the diet, right? I would just like binge, and I'd kind of gain weight, so all winter long, I was like static and I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't lifting weights or wasn't doing much cardio, and so I'd come into the spring, that March time frame, and I'd just be like a slug,
Yeah, it'd be like this balance of like, arduous on yourself, then laissez-faire, right? Like in season and out of season. Yeah, and then it was kind of hard to kind of get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, so I looked into it. I'm like, I'm going to get certified. I knew about spin class. I'd gone to a gym. I had a couple classes. I thought this was cool. So I got on. I looked up. I don't even know if they're around anymore. It's Mad Dog Spinning or something like that. I think it's under Spinner.
Yeah,
it's Mad Dog. Anyways, I got certified and I started teaching. I've taught at probably about 4 or 5 different gyms, but it was fun. Like there was one point where I was doing maybe 4 classes a week, and it was good. What it was really great for was I was able to pay for my races, buy bike equipment, buy gear and stuff like that. So I really got into that. I mean, I've taught around here, like Excel most recently, Treehouse. We used to do one called Crossroads Fitness, where I loved it. It was a small studio, and I started out like the Murray Parkway. So it was really fun, and that's just kind of, I've been doing it for about 15 years now.
And what's like the longest cycling in an event you've had to do in terms of miles?
Yeah, so a lot of the folks around here that'll hear this, there's one called Logan to Jackson, or Lodajet. It's 206 miles.
Hey!
Long ways. I've actually done it twice, but this is like small fry. There's some people that have done it 15, 20 times, and you get different medals or belt buckles and things like that.
Right.
One of the hardest races I've done, though, was a relay. It's still going on. It changed the name of it now, but it's called the Rockwell Relay. And it's from Moab to St. George. Utah.
Oh, wow.
And it is brutal. But you do have 4 riders, and so you each relay through like 3 different sections. But the 2 times I've done it is like brutal winds, crazy heat, because you're in southern Utah.
And you're in the desert. In terms of your performance in cycling, is like you're not really built like a cycler. No offense. Like for our viewers and for the case that's interviewed, if you could just like stand up and kind of like do a little spin for me, like you're built, you're a little bit thicker than your natural cyclist.
Well,
like in a good way. I'm not saying you're fat. I'm just saying like, you got some muscle on you. And I feel like historically speaking, they would say, oh, you don't want to any muscle on your body. You just want to be like as lean as possible to just have less weight on the bike.
I still love cycling. I get out and just do it casually, but I'm not racing with like a local amateur team anymore. Because I got to the point where I was just cycling. I do at least like 1 race a week, like a criterium, and then I do a couple longer races during the year. So there's a lot of cycling, 150, 200 miles a week on the bike. So my upper body, I was a lot leaner, right? I was lean on my legs. So I was at my peak, I was 150 pounds, and now I'm 170. But so I have put on more muscle, and that's the interesting thing that I've loved about this time frame is like COVID really changed a lot. I thought, well, I actually want to change it up a little bit. So I started lifting weights and kind of doing that and alternating that into some of my cycling. And that's where it's like the magic is like, so yes, I'm carrying more muscle than normal, but I've never been a super lean cyclist. I've never been the guy that can just climb super fast. I've never been the fastest sprinter. I've always been if I was in the race, I was like, hey, I can get up front, I can just hammer it, pull somebody in, and then they sprint, right? Type thing.
Yeah.
So kind of the workhorse of of the team.
But you did have a transition, right, where you were a little bit lighter, and then lifting weights, you actually added weight, but actually improved your performance, right?
Well, see, I haven't raced since I started lifting. I haven't been racing,
Okay.
but what I have noticed when
Okay.
I've gone out and done some of the rides that normally would be really like going out Little Cottonwood Canyon. I did this last year, and I've been lifting and doing a lot of like leg work and stuff like that, and running too. So that's the other thing that's kind of changed too. In the past 2 years, I've started running again, which I
Cross
stopped running
training a
for
little bit.
cross training. Yeah, trail running mostly. I don't like hitting the pavement too much. But the cardio from the running transitioned so well to cycling, and the lifting of the weights transitioned for more power. So I remember going up with a friend of mine. We were going up Little Cottonwood, and normally my heart rate, I got kind of a higher heart rate. So like 165, 170, I can stay that zone for a long time. I know it's a higher area, but I look down and I'm going about the same miles per hour, which is not very fast, around 7 miles an hour, 6.5, 7, which is slow. The pros do a lot faster, but it was an easy pace. We were still communicating, talking. And I looked down and like my heart's like 150, and I felt amazing. Like I'm like, oh man, I could push harder. Like to see what I was able to do. I actually did go back and do it quite a bit faster than some of the times I'd done before. So yes, carrying more muscle added more weight, gravity wise, but my cardio and my power was up. And so I started kind of like trying to understand, like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, why would that be the case? So yeah, that was really interesting to see that, you can still lift weights. I think a lot of people in the cycling, they don't want to lift weights and get bulky in the upper body. I get it, right? Maybe they have different goals and stuff. But for me, I started having less shoulder pain, less low back pain. I mean, there were times, man, that I was like living every day on ibuprofen, because I've got low back issues. All of this compounds from that bike accident. And lifting weights and cross training has just totally changed the way I feel.
Yeah. Rather than just one position cycling all the time, that's when you get kind of stuck in positions. It probably felt like after those long races, that's probably when the pain would kind of manifest. Is that pretty accurate? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And part of the thing that we do, in our field, in the lifting side of things, a lot of like with college athletes or professional athletes, they'll actually measure their power output. There's different squat machines that can kind of measure the distance they're traveling and determine their power output. And that's what they're trying to determine with how much weight they put on the individual. So obviously, body weight, I can just move really fast. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm producing a lot of power, but with a little bit of resistance, I'm actually going to be able to produce more explosive power out of it. So it's interesting because it's also, kind of the same concept with the bike. I mean, sure, you can be light, but think about the power production of that muscle firing. Also, having a little bit more weight on the bike, even if that's just improving your bone density through weight training, you're going to put more of that power to the pavement, right? Rather, getting more traction through those tires on the pavement.
Well, that it's interesting you bring that up, because I had over the past maybe, I don't know, 5 years, I started kind of taking some of those, like understanding my body composition better, right? And so body fat and like composition of my muscle. And so I've done the DEXA scans, right? So you and I were talking about this before. So these DEXA scans kind of give me a full scope. It's like a full body X-ray if you think about it. And so I was going back and analyzing. The most curious thing was the time when, like during COVID, when I said last year, maybe it was actually 2 years ago when I did that ride. I was looking at this and I'd actually gained 7 pounds, almost 7 pounds of muscle during that time. So I went up quite a bit in my muscle composition, and that's.
And I know you said the bone density increased as well.
Yeah.
Was some of that weight just your bone, or was that 7 pounds of muscle from the?
Yeah. So in 2021, my bone density. So this is my. They have what's called a T-score, and I can send you some scans of this so you can kind of compare. So I was at 0.8 in May 2021 in my bone density. This is kind of an average score, which is still like average. It's still normal. Like I was still in the normal area. There was no precursor to osteoporosis or osteopenia or anything like that. So those are the two things they kind of look for. Like if there's these numbers they have. So if you're -1 or above, like if you're 1 or 1.1, you're totally normal. If you're above -1, you're normal. As soon as you start dropping below that, then you've got osteopenia or osteoporosis that you start worrying about. So I was at a point, so
Degradation
totally
of the
normal.
bones.
Yeah. But I had started lifting and doing like heavy squats, like deadlifts, heavy squats, not crazy heavy. And believe me, I'm not I'm not a power lifter or anything like that.
When you still had that knee injury that you were kind of, not nursing, but wanted to be mindful of, so you weren't going to re-injure something.
Well, and I just prior to this, by about 3 years, I just had a meniscus surgery on my right knee because all those years of my left
Other
leg,
sides.
the other side I was favoring. So there's still a lot more muscle mass on my right leg, and I'm trying to rebalance that. But so at that time I thought, well, that's when I started kind of trying to lift a little heavier. So I got back into some squats, deadlifts, lunges, and upper body stuff. But anyways, I went from in 1 year, in less than a year, so in May 2021 to about February-ish 2022, I went to 1.9. So added a full point in bone density. And since then, it's stayed 1.5, 1.7, 1.3. And so years ago, I was reading this article in Outside Magazine. I'll see if I can find it and send it. You can just add the link to the podcast. And
For sure.
It showed actual cadaver bones of like a cyclist and somebody that was like a runner or somebody that was doing kind of weight-bearing exercise. And it was phenomenal, the difference, like so skinny. And that's the problem they see a lot of cyclists. They say you're not weight bearing, you're not getting that impact. And so your bones will adjust, they'll adapt, So that was what was really interesting about how this works for.
You're like suspending them in space, right? Like it's almost like what happens to astronauts when they're in space for so long, is their bone density can actually lessen. Right, because you're not actually getting like impact into the ground, that feedback response to know that, hey, we're under tension. So can you tell me a little bit about what your routine was like in that period? You said from May to what month of the next year? Was it a full year, or was it about 9 months?
Because I kept pretty good track. When I started in that May timeframe, I was just looking online, like YouTube, like finding experts that were doing certain things, like just different workouts, right? I even looked at things like what's the guy's name? He does the Athlete X guy. I looked at some of his workouts.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Cavalier. I think it's Jim Cavalier.
Jeff Cavalier. Yeah. So I looked at some of his, or I bounced over to other, just find articles and stuff like that. And I thought, well, let's just start playing around with some different workouts. So I was doing like what I told myself is, and this is one of the biggest problems you have with fitness, right, or lifting weights, is like I'd find something, I'd do it for a couple weeks, I'd change. I'd do something for a couple weeks, I'd change. And then I thought, this is ridiculous. Like I'm not making any headway. And so I said, if I find a program, I'm going to do this at least for 30 days, right?
There you go.
And so consistently for 30 days.
Get that compound effect.
Yeah, totally. And so I started doing like either 3 days a week full body. I did that for a little bit. Then I went to like a 30 days of like push pull legs, like 6 days a week for 30 days. And then I fell in love kind of with that same concept. That's why I was pulling my phone up here, because I was looking back and seeing which ones I really liked. I had a long stint of full body. And then I started getting into kind of this, and I found other simple ones, like, okay, I had to have like a plan. Like if I don't have enough time, especially with my career and job, I could do a certain workout in 15 to 30 minutes, right? And have something, whether it's full body or some push pull type stuff. But it's just kind of variety. But then a lot of it just became taking the stuff that I'd learned from people and putting them into place. I really like this idea of like, gating the body, full body in some aspects, but yet having a targeted focus, like upper body, like still work the legs a little bit, like maybe like sled pulls to strengthen my knees, because that's such a weak area for me. And then transition to do maybe say some of the upper body stuff. I still haven't mastered this. I'm not a pro at this by any means, but
whatever got you to be consistent. The proof is in the pudding right there with the DEXA scans of this is actually making my body change. This is improving my bone density. This is adding muscle to my system. And like you said, you haven't really raced necessarily, but you've done some of the rides that you've previously done before you weightlifted, and you've even felt and seen the performance differences. And I think that a lot has to do with just the fact that you did something. But I just wanted to kind of like help people know like I guess the lowest common denominator, like the lowest common factors was the fact that you were adding resistance training. It sounds like you were doing total body, and it was for over a 6 month period for you to see those type of results. And how many days a week would you say that you were working out? Were you weight training?
Yeah, so I was doing at least 4 days,
You were
four
okay.
days a week weight training. Yeah,
Yeah.
at
And
the
now were you
minimum was
still
3 days and five. It would bridge up to five depending on the week. So 3 to 5 days a week.
now was this a period where it was just kind of like a total off season from the aerobic stuff and just focusing on resistance, or were you also still riding and running at this time as well?
Yeah, I was still teaching a couple classes. I was teaching a Friday class and then a Saturday class. And during that time too, like COVID changed a lot with the cycling world. So like in spin indoor stuff. So I was still cycling that way, but I was probably riding once or twice a week. So I was
Yeah.
still incorporating cardio back into it. So I'm like, okay, here I'm, it's kind of a best of both worlds. Like I could, and a lot, I started focusing on diet too, because sometimes as a cyclist, there's this mindset in a cyclist, like, well, I ride hard so I can eat whatever I want. And there's like literally that is the mindset a lot of people have.
Same mindset in the weightlifting world. A lot of people just think, oh, because I pick up heavy weights, I can just eat whatever I want, and my body will put it into my muscle.
Yeah. Well, and that was a huge thing for me. Like just one, just like and I'm not. I have like a free day right now. So like, okay, if I'll have a free day, or a free meal. I know there's a lot
Mhm.
of controversy around that, but like hitting a lot of water, because that's the
Yeah,
fuel for muscle growth. And
yeah.
so tons and tons of water, and trying to eat a little bit healthier. And so I think I've got that figured out a little bit better. But yeah, so still doing
What
cardio, you know.
was it difficult um, going from someone who cycled a lot to adding the resistance training in and still cycling? Like, did you notice that at least while you were in this phase of kind of growing these skill sets, yeah, you see you nodding your head, like it was really hard to probably cycle on like sore legs, and your whole body was probably sore a lot of times.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
talk to me a little bit about that kind of like that mental component. I'm sure you kind of felt like, what, this isn't working for me. This is ruining what I love to do. Did you have to kind of like
Yeah.
overcome that a little?
Yeah, it would be. It'd be like I'd have to kind of like learn if I knew I had a ride coming up on a Saturday. And of course, at this time I had stopped racing, but it was more
Mm.
just for casual, like just because I wanted to still ride.
And keep
But it
up with your
was,
friends, probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally, yeah. And many of them have way gone further because they just have that they spend so much time on the saddle. But it was hard because I was like, okay, I'm gonna just train a little easier this day so I can recover, ride harder. But I've actually found that interesting that you asked that because, um, and of course I'm not riding as much as I used to, but I've learned that actually like doing a hard ride or like a hard race, because I started doing those Spartan races too, just endurance type things too. So I learned that going out and actually doing even a lighter weight training session seemed like it was helping my recovery. And that's what I want to dive
Interesting.
more into this because like I
Yeah.
just did this today. So like yesterday, I was telling you before, I went on this 10-mile hike looking for antler sheds, and it was 10 miles, 4,000 feet of vertical. My legs are just shot, right? This morning I wake up, I'm like, trying to, massage gun my calf muscles, and I'm sore.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm just
You're
going to
like
go lift.
standing
And I
on
went,
Jello and trying to get out of
yeah.
bed. Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, just so sore. And I just went this morning. I spent an hour at the gym. I did like some bike because I like that. It helps flush some of that out. And then I did like 10, almost 15 minutes of just sled pulls.
Mm. Mm.
And not a ton of weight, but just enough to kind of just get the blood flow. It's even
Yeah.
different than just doing than just doing cycling, because cycling really gets the blood flow going, but you're contracting those muscles. And I feel like that
Yeah.
contraction and there's probably something to this where it just flushes out that lactic acid. Like I'm standing here, I feel so much better than I did this morning, you know?
It's almost like necessity forcing the mother of invention, where, in order to get these muscles to fire more, I need to get rid of the exhaust. It's just how the system
Mhm.
has to work. So you're almost like forcing your body into a corner where it has to turn on its lactate production, and it has to clean out the muscle because, oh, we got plenty of more firing going. You're putting the demand on your body to force it to do its recovery instincts, which
Mhm.
it can do, just it won't always do it naturally. And won't always do
Right.
it at the right time that fits your schedule best.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess just to sum it up too, Matt, is for me is like, I mean, it's from a cycling background, and I'm not, like I said, and just for all your audience out there, like I'm not a pro or anything like that, but just I enjoy the sport of cycling. I love a lot of variety too. So I'm going to keep riding my bike and keep hitting the gym. I'm kind of incorporating even some trail running, some Spartan races, some obstacle races. And to me,
Yeah.
it's just like that same concept of like getting back on the horse, no matter what it is. If you've got injuries, find a way to work around it,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
tell you, the way I explain it to my wife sometimes is like, I would rather like, and I know this may come across wrong, I'd rather cause the sore muscles than just sit around and not do anything and have sore bones and joints.
Totally.
And so, stronger bones, stronger muscles, stronger ligaments and tendons and all those connective tissues will actually help you not feel those pains in the joints.
Yeah.
And I literally went from ibuprofen all the time, had ulcers. This
Get
is
built in your
several years
stomach.
back. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
ulcers. And so now on a very rare occasion, maybe once every 2 weeks now, if I'm like super sore or the back, if I do a hard back workout, it may flare up some of my low back issues that I have. But most of the time I don't. So
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah. That's
get back on the
wonderful.
horse.
Yeah, get back on the horse. That's the mentality. But I think
Yeah.
it goes to show, adding a little bit of resistance training in, even though if people hate it or don't know how to do it, it can actually improve your performance on the bike and just the way you feel off the bike. And just hearing
Yeah.
your story, getting out of like the knee pain, getting out of the shoulder pain by strengthening your muscular skeletal system, and how it kind of translated over into a little bit better performance on the bike. And it says a lot, Tyler, being someone who is an entrepreneur, also a part-time spin instructor and enthusiast, and a father. It's absolutely possible. I think a lot of times we pigeonhole ourselves by telling ourselves we don't have enough time or it's too difficult. But just got to get back on that horse.
Yeah. Yep. You can always find the time. And if you got family, like you said, being a dad, I get them out there with me, go on hikes,
There you
go
go.
running with them.
Right.
I mean, and
Yeah.
that's just how you do it. Like you got to build it into this lifestyle. That's kind of where I've gone from. And years ago, I spent too much time on the bike where I wasn't with the kids. And now I'm like, look, I'd rather be with my kids, hitting the gym with my son, who's 14 now,
Yeah.
or working out, or even at night with my 10-year-old daughter, like, let's do some pull-ups and push-ups. And she's learning how to do pull-ups with the band. And so there's a lot of great things you can do. You can build it into your lifestyle, which to
Yeah.
me is a holistic view of like improving oneself. So
No, I totally agree. I think fitness is at the forefront of um, not only being able to lead a healthier life for yourself, but almost being able to lead from the front for your family and galvanize everybody into action and movement and getting out of the house. And I think there's a lot to be said for that in today's day and age. So,
totally.
anything else you want to wrap up with before we part?
No, just get after it. Just whatever you're passionate about, just find a way to do it. Diversify a little bit if you need to. For anybody that's just pure cyclist, like, yes, you want to hit your legs and strengthen your legs, but also look at the upper body. Because, for me, I've spent so much time on the bike and on the computer, like we
Upper
pull
cross.
in,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Right.
And so getting some of that upper back, the exterior motion and stuff like that, it can really help. So anyways, just find the passion, build on it, and diversification will also help in a lot of aspects of your fitness
And then
level
consistency.
and mentality.
Once you pick your plan, like strong mentality, consistency. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on. You touched on a lot of great points here, and I'm hopeful that a lot of people get a little golden nugget from your information here today. So thanks again for coming on. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.